Trust is such an important element in the workplace. Study after study demonstrates that organizations where there is high trust amongst employees and between employees and their supervisors have more than 75% less stress in the workplace. They additionally have 50+% more productivity and more overall engagement and satisfaction. Trust is one of the most essential ingredients to increasing your bottom line, improving your employee retention rates, and generally expanding your company culture for the better. So here are 5 quick ways to think about maintaining and perhaps even building the trust amongst your team. First and foremost, as a leader, it's critically important that you remember that you are human, which is to say imperfect, and remember to show your humanity to your team. It may seem counterintuitive to some of you, but in order to build trust, you have to be human. Make mistakes because you're going to make mistakes, and then talk about your mistakes, and then talk about how you're going to move forward from your mistakes. Being human makes you more trustworthy because we're all imperfect. So if you're a leader that's trying very hard to never show that you've made a mistake or that you don't know the answer, what you're demonstrating is something that's a little bit untrustworthy, because who is that perfect? So the number one way to build trust is to be human fully, which is to say imperfect. And when mistakes show up, to live in the solution rather than the problem. That way you're modeling that for your team. We're going to make mistakes. Let's own up to them the moment that we do. And then let's get straight into the solution and not wallow in the problem. So number 1 tip for building trust is to be authentically human. Number 2 is to be consistent. Another way of thinking about that is to be authentic. As a leader, if you are constantly changing your personality, your perspective, your opinions, or your answer based on who's in the room with you, that kind of inconsistency and inauthenticity makes it hard for you to be trustworthy. Your staff members will soon come to realize that the way you will sway is dependent on who's in the room with you, and that puts everyone a little bit on edge. So if you want to be trustworthy, and if you want to build trust with your team, be consistent. Live in your core values. Live in the company's core values. Understand who you are, what your leadership style is, what your boundaries are, what your values are, and stay in that. Be consistent, and you will see your trust grow. Number 3 is to listen authentically and actively. We talk about active listening as its own category of leadership development, but it lives here in the category of building trust too, because when you don't listen authentically and actively, when you are just sort of nodding at the person talking to you, but then looking away, looking over there, checking your email, kind of nodding, but not really looking in their eyes, all of those behaviors that demonstrate the opposite of active listening demonstrate to the person that you are listening to that everything else is more important than them to you. If you want to build trust with your team, you want to connect with your team. And one of the best ways to connect is to genuinely actively listening. You're going to learn so much. You're going to truly connect. And that human connection is a phenomenal way to build trust. Number 4, be a coach, not a boss. And what we mean by that is the coach is actively, in real time, invested in their players and the stakes of the game. As a leader, if you're in a coach mindset, you're actively engaged with your players and the game at hand in the moment. So you know how they're doing, you know where they're struggling, you know where they're really thriving. You're yelling support at the places they're thriving, and you're yelling encouragement and corrective coaching at the places that they are struggling. You're in it with them. You know what the stakes are for them. You know what they're working on in that moment. And you are in real time offering support, offering guidance, suggestions. So really think of yourself in that coach mindset. You're in the game with them, and you are highlighting all the good, and you are offering course corrections for the places where they're struggling, with the intention that those course corrections are going to help them win the game. So think of yourself as a coach. If your team thinks of themselves as a team, with you as the coach of that team, they're really going to trust what's coming out of your mouth. And number 5, actively appreciate your team. We all want to be recognized when things go well, when we've contributed positively, when we've had an accomplishment, when something has gone well. So make sure in your leadership that you're not just focusing on the course corrections, that you're not just focusing on, we need to do better in A, B, and C. We didn't hit this metric. We didn't reach that goal. Instead, if you're actively ongoing practicing appreciation, here are the highlights, here's the bright spots, here are the things that did well, here are the things that I really appreciate about you, that is going to fill the soul bucket part of your team. And that's a really important thing to tend to, and it will build trust. So in summary, these 5 things, if you do only these 5 things, you will see the trust between you and your team improve dramatically. Number 1, don't forget to show up as the human that you are, which is to say, allow yourself to be imperfect, own up to your imperfections, and then move forward by living in the solution. Number 2, be consistent and authentic. Know who you are and the values that you stand on, and live consistently in that. Number 3, listen actively. Be present. Make sure your team knows that they are the most important thing to you. Number 4, be a coach, not a boss. Be in the game with them. Highlight the good moments, course correct the difficult moments, know what game they're in and what the stakes are, and be right there by their side, supporting them to the finish. And number 5, actively appreciate. Even the littlest of moments, show your team that you care, and you will find that your trust is growing exponentially.